Hey Rifters, I'm VFX and today I'm doing a guide on the video settings in Rift. I'm going to show you what each slider does and get the optimal settings and the minimum settings for your graphic settings when you're in your dimensions. So first of all, how do we get to the graphical settings? Well, you can either click escape and click settings, or you can go down to the bottom where it says system, which also pops up a performance tooltip which tells you your latency and frame rate if you didn't already know that. Click on that, settings, and here we go, we have the settings option here. We then have lots of different ones, but it's actually under video and advanced, and here we go, and let's go and start off with the actual graphical settings themselves. And there we go, we put the settings on the side so we can actually see what we're actually doing. So first of all, I'll put everything down onto 0 apart from texture quality and pixel guarantee, so we can see what the minimum requirements are everything. So the minimum requirements for now is texture quality on 3 and pixel guarantee on 100. I might not be able to pronounce all these words, guys, and so I'm sorry. So let's now talk about this. Texture quality. So what is this? This basically changes the resolution of textures, and I recommend on 3, but if later on in the video or later on when you add more settings on, if it starts to lag you out a bit, turn it down to 2, but beware that you have to restart the game for this in effect to change every time you change the texture quality. So pixel guarantee is a really bad setting. It basically pixelates your screen so you can actually get more FPS and it just looks horrible. So that is another minimum of 100. Always leave it like that. So let's go on to the other settings and go for what we should say the minimum settings you should require. So first of all, terrain distance. Terrain distance basically, if you see in the back over there, we have a mountain and the mountain's been cut off. Well, what terrain distance does is the terrain in the very background, it increases as you increase the slider distance, you'll be able to see more in the distance of the terrain. Well, I actually found that if you have it on 1, it gets cut off. If you get 2, minimum, all the mountains and everything comes back, as you can see in the background, and this is really all you need for a minimum of 2. So when you're in dimension, only really need 2 minimum of the terrain distance. So now let's go down and the anisopic filtering. So for this basically sharpens up the textures and everything around. So as you can see over here, it looks a bit okay. I say it looks okay. But if you change it to 1, nothing really happens. If you change it to 2, and as you can see, everything started to get a little bit sharper around the place. I don't know if you saw that. Let's try it again. There we go. A bit horrible. Everything's more sharper. So minimum of 2 of anisotropic filtering so that everything around you becomes a little bit more sharper, for example. So I've talked about pixel quality, and we've talked about pixel guarantee, texture quality and pixel guarantee. So let's go into the other side of the sliders. Shader complexity. So this basically indicates the shader tool on the tree on objects. It doesn't really increase shades. It basically, if you have an object like this tree here, it'll increase more dense, make it look more tree-like. So if we change this to 2 minimum, as like the ones before, it doesn't really happen until you hit 2. If we now look at these trees here in front of me, if I click it on, as you can see, the trees now have more dents in them. They look more lifelike. They look completely more lifelike than they were before. So this is what basically the shader complexity does. So it adds more lifelikeness on trees or any other object at all, really. So make sure that is on 2 as well. So now let's go down to the tick boxes at the bottom, and we see one that says projected textures. The projected textures is a must because now we have the new VFX around in Dreamweaving. This basically, if you want to have the terrain paints on the floor, you must have this turned on, otherwise you won't actually see them at all. So actually, wait, we still don't see anything on the floor. That is because of the particle quantity. How particle quantity works is if you've got loads of visual effects in your screen, the more you increase it, the more visual effects you get on your screen. Increase it in more and more, you are able to see a lot more different visual effects all around the place. So this really is a must to play around with, and I'll show you an example right now on how this works with a lot of the new Dreamweaving items. But make sure that right at the moment, all this here is the minimum requirements completely, all minimum requirements, and then we're just going to play around with the pixel quantity to improve it a little bit. So let's now go do that. So as we can see in this dimension, it's really good, but there isn't really many effects around. So as we increase the pulsar quantity, which increases the visual effects of each individual place item, it starts to add in more and more and more different items and different effects that we have all around. So as we can see all around, all these different blue things are different visual effects from Dreamweaver, and as we increase it, the more they add. So we just want it around, I don't know, maybe 300 for now. Obviously, if there's a lot of visual effects and you can't actually see them all, I guarantee you just put it up to maximum if you're going around checking out other people's dimensions, just to make sure that you actually see everything. And this setting takes quite a while for it to kick in, so beware to sit around for a little while for it to see the actual effects. So now we've done the particle quantity, and now there's more particle effects around, so more actual things are actually being allowed to come through. So something that's really important for Dimensioneers is the object detail and distance. Basically because they allow more objects in your visibility screen and the detail of them, depending on how far away they are. So first of all, let's go off with the object distance. So as we increase the distance of the object distance, we start to see more things appearing, and as we start doing it, as you can see, more things in the background start to appear, not only just dimension items, but the actual in-game items themselves. So for example, like trees, all that kind of stuff. So I would suggest playing around with this slider first, see what you increase upwards and what you want really around. To make sure this is really important as well for, say, all the minimal settings we've just done. This is an important one as well for this. So play around with this, make sure that the object distance is high enough so you can actually see all the dimension items in your visibility, and also different ones that are further out apart that might actually be part of the actual world. So object detail, what does this do? This thing basically increases the detail of objects. So as we can see here, as I move backwards and forwards, as I get closer to it, the item gets really nice detail onto it, and move away, it goes away. So if I then increase the object detail, it doesn't increase the detail of it, but increases the distance detail. So if I've increased it a little bit more, I think, maybe a little bit more. There we go. Now the item itself has now got more detail in it. So as I start to move away, the object is just faded off, and now it's gone back to normal again. So as we increase it, and it's come back to detail. So basically, as you can see, the object detail basically improves the detail of items the further away. So you might want to increase the object distance to maybe like 100 or whatever, and have the object detail up quite high. Or so for example 80, this is quite far away as we can see, and it's still there. So 80, and it's the object detail for that little thing over there is pretty good. So make sure you play around with the object distance to make sure items spawn, and object detail to make sure it looks like they are much better quality the further away they are. So play around with those settings. So now we've played with the object distance and detail, so we know what that does. Now it's going to like some more improvements of the actual graphics themselves and make items look a lot better. So first of all, let's go for ambient occlusion. This increases the lighting detail of objects, making them look like they have more of a shadow, making them look more round, and etc. So if we click it, as you can see, everything starts to look different. Turn it off and back on. So it gives it more of an effect, more like it's an actual item itself. So the visual full screen effect adds a bit of it blur and distortion on your screen, making it look a bit nice, and gives it bloom, so any lights make it actually look like it's more shining. So let's look at this light here. As I turn it on, makes it look like it's actually glowing and give an effect of lighting on the actual grass here, a bit of more effect, and as you see, it just makes it all round look nicer. So as we can see, we've got the minimum settings on, turn on two more things to make it look actually nicer, and we've got the object distance so that items actually spawn further away. And as we can see already, we haven't really changed much, and it's already looking really good. And the FPS is quite low, about 30, bit less, so dropped about 10 FPS from it being from all off. But I think as we start to, the graphic change and start to improve, this will change, but it's really good, and those two effects, that's what they really do. So moving on, to make something else, really, is the ground clutter density and ground clutter radius. So let me move into another dimension to explain that. So as you can see, the floor right now is pretty bare, nothing there at all. So first of all, we want to change the ground clutter density to 10, for example, or any height, just so we actually see this being spawned. So the ground clutter radius, what is ground clutter actually? Well, ground clutter is basically extra grass on the floor, extra rocks, just little things around on the floor that's already been in the world. So if we make sure that the ground clutter density is on, so we actually see some things, as we turn up the radius of the actual ground clutter, as we can see, the actual thing is actually behind us. Well, it actually starts from the bottom of your screen. The ground clutter starts from the bottom of your screen and then moves upwards as further away you get. So as we can see, I move my screen around, it actually stays with me and not in front of me. So if we increase this more and more, the grass or flowers start to spread out more and more. So let's put it onto about 50. It looks pretty good, quite far away. You can see quite nice. And we can turn down the ground density, and this basically reduces the amount of different flowers we have. So if we have it onto like 3, we don't really have that many. Onto full, we have a lot. So let's put it on for 10 for now. As we can see, you can just play around with this one. You might actually want this at all, because some dimensions might not even have ground clutter density, ground clutter. So for an example, like if you have a moonshade one and you're actually using the thing on the ground, or in here, and you're actually using the grass on the ground, then it would be highly advised to turn it up so you can actually see stuff on the ground. If not, if you're not even using on the actual terrain you're given, and it doesn't have any flowers, then there's no point even having this setting on. So this is just if you actually need to look if there's actual things around. So make sure if you use this on or off, depending if you actually need to use it or not. So let's go back and you go for the final last settings, which improve a lot of looking wise. So we're back in here for the final time, and just a little bit more settings. So if you actually want your items look to more lighting quality, so the lighting looks more realistic, or you just need to change the lighting quality to nothing, or to 1, nothing doesn't work. Well, if you change it to 4 minimum, as we see in these plants here, it gives it more of a realistic value of like the actual light is actually shining onto the grass. So if you want the lighting quality, more light quality, then I suggest you turn it on to 4, and it gives it a bit of extra lighting quality itself. So finally, shadows. Well, shadows currently going to be worked on soon because they give it the most FPS loss. So make sure that you, as you're building your dimension, change it to environmental so you can actually see what it actually looks like with shadows. And if you're going around someone else's dimension, I suggest putting on shadows on so you can actually see what it looks like. So let's turn that off again for now. Turn the lighting effects to 4. As we can see, everything looks amazing. So we haven't really changed much settings if we change the clutter down and the radius down, because we don't have anything on the floor here. So we've got no shadows on, no more lighting quality, and we've got all the minimum settings on with some object distance so we actually see objects, with a little bit of extra lighting or texture quality, and it looks really good. For example, it looks actually really amazing. I can even turn on the shadows and it still looks amazing without even the extra lighting quality. So I hope this has helped you on what the actual things do and what the minimum setting should be for you, so you can actually see things themselves and what is actually important for when building dimensions and what is important where. So thank you Dimensioneers for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave any comments if you're stuck and ask any questions, and see you later.